It's time for another one of these videos in this series that's all about making a shift. So I have been actively trying to make this major change in my life. And there are certain things that I've been doing, certain things that I've learned from some of the experts, some of the creatives and the entrepreneurs who've done this already. And they're just out there giving this stuff out for free. If you listen to podcasts, if you watch videos, and that's what I've been doing. I've been taking notes and trying some of these things, and I'm seeing where it's going. I don't know where it's going yet, but I'm trying it, and I'm inviting you to join me. So today is the talk about failure, because here's the thing: you're gonna fail. Now, I don't mean all out failure where, like, you throw in the towel and you're done with it. But just these that things are not always going to go the way you had hoped or planned or imagined that they would. So you have to get really comfortable with failure, and you have to let go of that resistance, let go of the attachment, let go of the judgment, because things don't always go the way they were planned. And you have to be okay with that. You have to learn that, hey, sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I try things and it falls flat. Sometimes I'm not going to make the progress that I had hoped I would. And you have to be okay with that. So whatever change you're making, whether you're trying to get into better health, you're trying to become more creative, you're trying to make a major career change, you have to be okay with the fact that you're going to stumble, you might fall, and you're going to have to pick yourself back up. Um, I was listening to Austin Kleon, and he was talking about Sturgeon's law. So Sturgeon was a guy who basically this quote of his, or this law of his, is that 95% of what you do is crap, plain and simple. That if you're a maker, a creator, an artist, like, you're going to do a bunch of stuff that just you're going to feel like it's crap, but then you're going to have a small percentage that you feel like, hey, it's not too bad. And especially when you start out. So if you're trying to be more creative, you're trying to be more artistic, you got to understand, like, you're going to make stuff, it's not always going to be a masterpiece. If you're teaching yourself to be a baker or to be a cook, you're going to make stuff that you're like, oh, I just burned that, or oh, I forgot this ingredient and this really doesn't taste good, oh, throw that away. If you're trying to get healthier, you're going to realize, like, oh, I'm not making the progress, or hey, I ate a whole bag of potato chips last night, or I didn't exercise, or whatever. So you're going to stumble, you're going to fall, you pick yourself back up, and you do the work. That's part of it. If you're not failing, if you're not making mistakes, if you're not stumbling, then you're playing it too safe, and you're never really going to reach the maximum. So if you're creating and making art, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm happy with everything that I do, then you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing, you're not changing, you're playing it too safe. So keep that in mind, that you want to take risks. Now, you don't want to cut off your hand, you don't want to push yourself and injure yourself if you're trying to get healthy, but you do need to take risks, you need to change it up, and you need to understand that, yeah, sometimes this does not work out. Give you a um, real life example of this. I recently just got notified that a class that I was really looking forward to teaching just got canceled because they didn't have enough signups. So talking about like a failure, like, hey, I put this class together. I've taught it before and it was successful, and we had people show up for it. But I did this time around. Oh, nope, sorry. So get the email, like, we're going to have to cancel it. So yeah, man, it hurt, man. It felt bad. I was very bummed about it, but I kind of have to pick myself up, dust myself off, and say, okay, that didn't work out the way I'd hoped, but now what? Let me keep moving. And that's the key to failure, is that it's not about failure that I'm getting knocked down and I'm not getting up. It's not about failing where I'm just chucking it all, saying I can't do that. It's about making mistakes or doing things that just don't work out and then realizing, like, oh, that didn't work out. Now what? Where am I going to go from here? What lessons am I going to learn from that and take that and move forward? And that's about growth. And so, in order to do this thing that we're trying to do, this change, to make this shift, you've got to understand that it's not always going to be roses. It's not always going to be, perfect successes. You're not going to always do stuff that you're happy with. You're going to feel like, hey, I'm making a bunch of crap. I'm doing a bunch of crappy things, but I'm improving. I'm growing. I'm shifting. I'm making a difference. And you got to understand that this stumbling is part of this process. So, I just invite you to understand that it's not always going to go according to plan. Things are going to fall apart. That things are going to happen where you're going to feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. This didn't turn out. This artwork isn't what I had hoped it would be. But then you realize, like, you know what? Let me go ahead and do it. So make bad art. If you're an artist, make bad art. I mean, that's some of the advice from some of these folks, is that, you know what? You just sit down and you do it. And sometimes it's awesome and sometimes it's not. And, if you make enough bad stuff, eventually you're going to end up making some good stuff too, because you're learning and you're growing. So, anyway, think about how you deal with failure. What happens when you stumble? Are you picking yourself back up and continuing anyway and doing the work and showing up? Or are you allowing it to defeat you? Because that's the thing. It's like a lot of times we feel like, oh, that I failed at that, so that must mean I'm no good. And when we get in this whole cycle of shame and blame, and we blame ourselves and we feel ashamed of ourselves, and we want to just chuck it and say, okay, that's not for me then, and it's getting a little bit hard, and that's it, I'm done, I'm going to quit. Well, you got to show up and you got to do the work, and you have to expect to fail, because it's through that failure that we're growing, that we're trying, and the failure shows that you are trying and taking risks. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you've been thinking of this. If let me know, some of the failures that you've encountered as you've been doing this, and how you have overcome them, or how you have persevered through them. And I would love to kind of hear your stories about what it is that you've been doing. So anyway, get comfortable with failure, get comfortable with making mistakes, because it's not going to be the end of the world. It just means that you're living, you're trying, you're doing it. And if you sit back and say, okay, I'm afraid of failure, I'm never going to do anything, you're never going to make that change. You're never going to make that shift that you're hoping that you're going to. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in once again. And as always, happy creating, because we're creating this huge change, and sometimes we're going to fail at it. Thank you.